Welcome to Sekulow. This is Logan Sekulow. Will Haynes is in studio with me. James Comey is the headline of the day because the FBI has decided maybe it's time we look into this, actually start an investigation into what's going on with Russia and with James Comey and everything that played into it. Again, Comey, don't play that. It's going to be a great show. Coming up next, my dad, Jay Sekulow, is going to join us. But Will, why don't you go over that breaking news?
That's right. So we are now finding out that both the former CIA Director John Brennan and the former FBI Director James Comey are under criminal investigation. Whoa. The former CIA Director John Brennan, there was a criminal referral sent over to the Department of Justice by current CIA Director John Ratcliffe. They referred evidence of wrongdoing by Brennan to FBI Director Kash Patel for potential prosecution. And sources have also said that there is an investigation into James Comey. Now, with James Comey, he was in the news with his 8647 seashells a few weeks ago.
Always finds a way to work his way back in.
This isn't about his seashells.
Not yet. That'll be in 5 more years.
This is about the Russiagate hoax that was perpetrated by John Brennan and James Comey. And we know that just a few days ago, right before the holiday, the 4th of July, the CIA declassified a review of the internal tradecraft that the CIA used in their review of the 2016 election. And they found a lot of issues. They found that there was a lot of abnormalities, like John Brennan himself getting into that review, being normally directors and senior staff like that look at the work product after. They don't become a part of that work product. There is an abbreviated timeline because the Obama administration wanted to get something out before President Trump took office, and things like John Brennan himself pushing for the inclusion of the Steele dossier, even at the protest of some of the other intelligence community members. So we've got this breaking news. They're under criminal investigation. There's some caution there, obviously, Logan, because
it's a source.
It's a source. The FBI and DOJ don't normally talk about investigations. One of the anomalies to that was James Comey himself when he gave lots of primetime announcements about Hillary Clinton. But we're going to see where this goes. We're going to get your dad's take in the next segment because obviously he lived through this and fought this for a long time. So we'll see what he has to say.
He'll be on the next segment. And I'd like to hear from you. Do you think this is good? Or do you think we just need to move on? What do you think? Should we be looking back at these situations and making sure people who are doing things unethically, unjustifiably, are brought to justice, including people like James Comey and John Brennan? I think this is an interesting moment. Will and I were on the phone last night when this broke. You know, it's nice. It's nice we know what the topic's going to be even a few hours before. Will was very giddy in telling me, lead topic. Well, I mean, when you get a criminal investigation of the former CIA director and former director of the FBI that pushed this Russia collusion hoax, I get excited to see justice may be served here. These guys are born for this. I mean, what kind of names? John Brennan, James Comey, Ratcliffe. I mean, John Ratcliffe. These are like, they feel like they're from like the olden times, these names. They were meant to be CIA directors and FBI and intelligence. All right. And my dad, Jay Sekulow, is joining us because not only are we going to talk about this, but we are celebrating 35 years of the ACLJ during our 35 years of justice drive. All donations are effectively doubled right now. All you got to do is make a donation of any kind, and another ACLJ supporter or champion, someone that gives monthly, is going to unlock their pledged donation. We'll be right back.
Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington has filed a lawsuit to bar former President Trump from appearing on presidential ballots in Colorado.
We've talked a lot about this 14th Amendment issue and the attempt to take candidates off the ballot. The ACLJ is directly engaging this battle for your freedom and your right to vote.
If you're a voter in Alabama, if you're a voter in Florida, if you're a voter anywhere, this will affect you no matter what. It's happening in Colorado.
The reply brief has been filed. It's a third brief filed, in this case just to the Supreme Court.
The court has decided unanimously that Donald Trump cannot be disqualified as a presidential candidate.
A 9-0 victory at the Supreme Court for President Trump and our client.
I would say it's the most significant case like this that we've ever handled. Support our critical work at aclj.org.
Welcome back to Sekulow. My dad, Jay Sekulow, Chief Counsel of the ACLJ, and obviously someone who was deeply involved in this situation, is joining us for his commentary. Will, why don't we give us a little bit, like if people are just joining us, give us like a 30-second recap, and then let's get our thoughts.
30-second recap is that there are sources telling Fox News that the former CIA Director John Brennan and former FBI Director James Comey are under criminal investigation for potential wrongdoing related to the Trump-Russia probe. And in addition to that is that there was a criminal referral sent over by the current director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, to the FBI about wrongdoing by Brennan. We don't have a lot of details. Obviously, the DOJ and the FBI don't comment publicly on investigations. This would be early stages of a criminal investigation. But let's go right to your dad. And just knowing what you know and what you lived through, do you think this is a long overdue investigation?
Well, let me tell you a couple of things. Number one, if there's two lawyers in America that know something about the situation with Comey and Brennan, it's Jay Sekulow and Jordan Sekulow, because we, as you both said, we lived it. Look, I think this is long overdue. The question's going to be, is there an action that took place within the statute of limitations that would then justify going from a criminal investigation to a criminal prosecution? We know that the entire issue of the Steele dossier and the way they tried to basically shake down the then president-elect of the United States, we now know, of course, with the evidence that we gathered during the course of the impeachment proceedings and Bob Mueller's investigation, more particularly the Mueller investigation, we know that there was no violation of any law by the president. We know also that there was no collusion between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. That was the conclusion of Bob Mueller. Now, here's the issue that is important. James Comey oversaw the FBI at a critical time. It was during Crossfire Hurricane, which was the first investigation we now know of the sitting president of the United States, or then the president-elect, and also the candidate. Remember, though, once he was elected president in 2016, it was James Comey, the FBI, James Brennan, and John Brennan, these others, that decided that they would meet with President-elect Trump and brief him on the discredited dossier. It was a shakedown. That's what it was. It was an attempt to intimidate a president. It was a move to try to curtail the president's initiatives by distraction. And we also know that James Comey leaked a memo that he prepared in a government vehicle about a conversation he had with the president of the United States, and he leaked it to a law professor friend of his to get to the press. So should this be looked into criminally? You bet.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are commenting saying, hey, is this a distraction? Is this something we need to actually be focusing on now? Should we just move on, let history tell the story and move on? But you're saying, no, that's not the way it should be. It should be looked into because these were egregious acts that happened time and time again. So you can't just let these things slide, or whether it's a Republican or Democrat, these kind of moments from the FBI and the CIA can happen again.
Look, James Comey has got a record of intervening in presidential elections. He did that also, remember, it's, I think, important to remember, he did it to Hillary Clinton with announcing an investigation opened, an investigation closed, and then reopened 4 days before the general election, none of which he had the authority to do. He did it around the attorney general's back. So, look, there's a whole host of issues that need to be looked at. because what you cannot have are these rogue agents or rogue leaders trying to basically stop the actions of the duly elected president of the United States.
So what's the real consequences of this? I think that's going to be a question too, because look, we're here, James Comey, someone who we've known who's never been really good at the final consequences. He's always someone who tells you all the horrible things someone has done, and then of course couldn't actually get anything done. Now we have the reverse here. What should people be anticipating on what this investigation actually does look like in terms of a result?
Okay, so we should not hear about the investigation while it's ongoing. What we should hear is at the conclusion of the investigation, if the Department of Justice decides to make a move for a grand jury impaneling and then a prosecution. Do I think there's evidence of it to move forward? I think there's certainly enough to take it to this investigatory stage. I suspect that there will be enough for the investigative stage to merge or morph into a prosecutorial stage. And then, of course, ultimately a trial. But they should be held with what they did. They tried to stop the government of the United States from operating according to the Constitution of the United States. So you bet they should be held accountable. And it's going to be, the interesting thing is the Ratcliffe, his decision to make a referral to the FBI, which is within the Department of Justice, of course. That means he had seen something. I don't know this, obviously. But I'm just looking at it from the referral coming. The reports indicate the referral came from the Department of Justice, to the Department of Justice, rather, from John Ratcliffe over at CIA. Right. That tells me they saw something, or he saw something, that concerned him enough to know that there has been a violation of the law and moving that to now a criminal stage.
There is about 3.5 years left in President Trump's term. Is this something that can get done in that? I know that sounds like a long time for a lot of people, but with the justice system, with the legal system, we know that's not always the case. Is this something that can get done within his term?
Certainly the investigation, and if there's a grand jury impaneled and indicted, the answer to that is yes. Could it go to trial from this day forward? 3 years? Tough, unless the investigation is much further along than we anticipated. But remember, the previous administration indicted the former president of the United States. They've been trying to take this guy down for 10 years.
That's one other angle as well. You mentioned that Comey admitted, even bragged about leaking that memo to the press. He bragged about sending spies in. I'm seeing a lot of comments from people on both Rumble and YouTube saying they remember you saying these very things back in real time when it was happening and calling out these specific actors. But in addition to the report of the criminal referral, John Ratcliffe just a few days ago on July 2nd released a declassified intel tradecraft review. And it gives a little bit of color to this because it appears John Brennan, either at the behest of the president of the United States, Barack Obama at the time, or on his own volition, got deep into this process in December after Trump was elected, before Trump would take office in that first term. And he was making decisions that were outside of CIA norms. And he was the one that insisted, even at the protest of other members of the intel community, of including the Steele dossier in this report. We've got about 2 minutes left, but I just want to get your take on that. Could that be an angle that maybe arose when they reviewed how this took place?
Well, certainly. I mean, we don't know the evidence of what they've seen or what new data they have gathered, but the nature of what happened justifies the investigation. There's no doubt about it. But remember this also. They were trying to take this guy down before he was elected. They were trying to take him down once he was elected. They were trying to take him down once he served in office. Then they did it all again and tried it again this time, and it didn't work, trying to remove him from ballots. So look, Comey and Brennan and a host of others, what they did was outrageous for the American people. It was a violation of the Constitution, and at the end of the day, this is why the ACLJ exists. We've been dealing with this up front for 7 years. It took that long to get attention to it now. I'm glad we did. I've been saying, if you went back and traced how long I've been saying this, it would be almost a decade, 8 years, 8 years.
Yeah, Dad, I wanted to bring that up because, of course, this month is our 35 Years of Justice drive. Our match, our donations are doubled right now during this month because we are celebrating 35 years. And this is just another example about how the ACLJ team members, not just the donors and supporters, but also people like you and like Jordan and like so many of others, have been involved on the front lines, whether that is for people who are have a Bible club they want to make sure they can have in schools, or representing the President of the United States.
Well, look, I mean, it was an incredible time in our nation's history. And the ACLJ, if you look back on it, whether it's President Trump or other times, we've been there for all the major events globally. So your support of the ACLJ right now, as we celebrate 35 years of working for justice around the globe, is critical. I want to urge you to do it. To support the work of the ACLJ, your donation will be doubled. Do it today.
Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington has filed a lawsuit to bar former President Trump from appearing on presidential ballots in Colorado.
We've talked a lot about this 14th Amendment issue and the attempt to take candidates off the ballot. The ACLJ is directly engaging this battle for your freedom and your right to vote.
If you're a voter in Alabama, if you're a voter in Florida, if you're a voter anywhere, this will affect you no matter what. It's happening in Colorado.
The reply brief has been filed. It's a third brief filed, in this case just to the Supreme Court.
The court has decided unanimously that Donald Trump cannot be disqualified as a presidential candidate.
A 9-0 victory at the Supreme Court for President Trump and our client.
I would say it's the most significant case like this that we've ever handled. Support our critical work at aclj.org.
Welcome back to Sekulow. It's a great show today. We've been packed. We've been talking about a lot of topics. We had my dad, Jay Sekulow, join us. Now we have Secretary Pompeo, Mike Pompeo, joining us. Will, I'm going to let you kick off this with some questions for Secretary Pompeo, because these are some interesting days, and it feels like every 24 hours, we always know what we're going to be leading with, Will. These stories kind of break, and this one is the one we've been talking about all day, and another person who really, I'm sure, has invaluable commentary on this, Secretary Pompeo.
That's right. So we found out last night that the FBI is investigating both James Comey as well as the former CIA Director John Brennan. That's a title that our esteemed colleague here also shares, is former CIA director. While we don't know too much about the details of this, and that's as it should be, because when there's an investigation, typically the DOJ and FBI should not be talking about an ongoing investigation. But it's allegedly about their role in the Russiagate matter, the probe into collusion between President Trump and Russia. What are your initial thoughts when you saw this break?
Well, my initial thoughts, Will, were that I was unsurprised in the following sense. Director Brennan, John Brennan, who was the CIA director immediately before me, had deeply politicized this thing that became known as the ICA. It was associated with an investigation and some data, and then the Steele dossier that the FBI had found under Director Comey, and they had created a process that was very unusual. They had put some people on it that were outside the normal process, and then they had gone to the White House with this information when it was way too preliminary to have done so. And then they ultimately published it, which is also very unusual. The CIA usually does analysis and analytics and provides that to decision makers in a classified setting. And instead, they chose to go public with this at a very critical time around the election. And so I don't know what they'll find ultimately, but I do hope that they complete this investigation in a way that is not politicized, but deeply, deeply reported and well done, and that the FBI and DOJ will do their best to make what they can of this public. And if there are prosecutable offenses, that they will do that as well.
You mentioned that ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, which is what kicked everything off. And that was the work product post election in 2016, but before the transition from the Obama presidency to the Trump presidency. And Director Ratcliffe put out a declassified internal tradecraft review of that work product just a few days ago, and it showed anomalies in the way that the CIA would typically produce a work product like that, including the director himself being very heavily involved, not listening to dissents when it came to some of the opinions that were in there. When you look at something like that, and obviously you have a lot more knowledge than you can probably share on air when it comes to even the workings of this, but is that an important transparency, being able to share something like that? Or is it once again something that the CIA should be more closely guarded about?
I'm very comfortable with what Director Ratcliffe released. I think he did so in a very careful fashion, a very thoughtful fashion. The intelligence community has an obligation where it can share information with the public. It ought to. And when it can't, it has to protect it vigorously and prosecute people who violate that idea of confidentiality or classification. So I think Director Ratcliffe is in a very measured way trying to make clear to the American people that he's working on this project and that he'll do his best to release the results. But let's be certain of this, that what came out when that ICA was ultimately released by the Obama administration at an unclassified level, it was intentional. It was intended to undermine the Trump presidency. I wrote in my book about the fact that Director Comey briefed President Trump on January 6th of 2017. I remember the date expressly now that January 6th has become such a big deal. January 6th, 2017, and essentially told President Trump that we have information that suggests that you are a Russian asset or too close to the Russians. That was not true. The Steele dossier has proven to be nearly wholly fabricated, and it set back our administration greatly. And that is at the very least, a failure of the intelligence community, the FBI and the CIA, but in the worst case, an intentional politicization of it. And if it's the latter, the individuals who did that need to be held accountable.
You also mentioned just even the trust in these intelligence agencies that we saw suffer, one through the end of the Obama presidency and then under others in the previous administration. But I wanted to get your take on this because I remember very distinctly when you became the director of the CIA, you said the CIA, something to the effect of the CIA is getting back to secrets and kind of refocusing the mission on what the purpose of the CIA is. And do you think that, and I'm sure you have many thoughts on this and could probably write another book just on the shift in the IC from protecting secrets and doing espionage and things of that nature and becoming this political machine. Do you think that is expressly why the public has lost so much trust in the IC community between the Obama years and the Biden years as well?
I absolutely do 100% believe that when these organizations stray from their mission, right, to protect us all, right? The FBI's mission is to keep criminals off the streets and to protect us from foreign espionage. And the CIA's job is to get good intelligence so presidents and secretaries of defense can make good decisions. When they walk away from that mission, when they say, we're not going to take any risk, we're not going to go out and do espionage, we're not going to keep secrets, we're instead going to go engage in political behavior. And we saw this, by the way, we saw this with the Hunter Biden laptop. We saw the same characters, Clapper and Comey and Brennan. We saw these same characters go sign a document that was patently false, right? They knew it was intended to mislead. So President Biden could succeed in his debate, had a talking point in his debate. When they engage in that kind of behavior, these institutions lose the trust and credibility that they need to perform a vital American function, and they will be they will be limited in what they can do because the American people said, we have no confidence in you. And that's really dangerous if they're out. They perform important functions. They should stay focused on their mission. And when they lose that, the American people will rightly come to doubt them and ultimately restrict them from their ability to perform their mission.
One final question for you today. As I know the work you did was trying to restore, one, the core mission, but also the trust as well. And I know that Director Ratcliffe shares that same vision of restoring the good work as well as the public trust. What else can be done for not obviously with Tradecraft, with the things that the work they're already doing, but to re-engage the American public to have trust in these institutions, because many times the work, getting back to it, when you're doing it right, no one will ever know about the good work that the CIA does and these intelligence community agencies perform. So you kind of have this competing interest when doing the right thing means people don't know what you're doing. How do you think we can start to rebuild the trust in many of these institutions?
So I have a number of thoughts. I'd begin with this. It's very important that individuals who violate that trust, who behave in ways that are inconsistent with what they're supposed to be doing, are held accountable. And I'm not talking about just junior people who make a mistake or what have you. Fine, they should be held accountable too. But in the end, the political appointees, the folks that the President of the United States appoint, have to be held accountable if they do that. And so I hope that what Director Ratcliffe will be able to achieve is sufficient transparency to demonstrate real accountability. And then second, you're right. Sometimes you just have to keep your head down and nobody knows the good work you're doing. That's the nature of the work these institutions perform. But then they also have the obligation when they can and when it's appropriate to share with the American people what they're doing, why they do it, how this accountability is built into the system. And when you do that, people will come to trust these remarkable young men and women who risk their lives on the streets to keep us safe in the United States for the FBI and then doing this abroad for the Central Intelligence Agency.
Let's go to Ronald in South Carolina, watching on Rumble, one of our favorite free speech platforms.
Yes, thanks for taking my call. Enjoyed the show, and especially right now from all of the things that are literally coming to light and having to sit on hands and just waiting to finally see the house of cards crumble when with all those like Comey and Brennan and all these others in the swamp just literally trying to destroy Trump and everything. And so I see that certainly there is a change coming, but yet there are those liberals who are still there saying, well, as far as I'm concerned, the end justifies the means, and I was okay with what they were doing just to keep Trump out of the office and stuff like that, keep things as they were.
It is easy, Will, to get jaded in this.
Yes.
I think that these investigations are always going to lead towards nothing because it does feel that way.
Well, and remember what your dad said as well earlier in the show. One of the biggest blessings that people like Brennan and Comey got was the issues and abnormalities in the 2020 election, whether it be the whole country shut down or whatnot, that Joe Biden became the president of the United States because it put enough distance between them from the time. So we don't know what's in the investigation, and that's good. We shouldn't know while they're investigating. But if they can prosecute these people, and there is the evidence to do so, and a grand jury returns an indictment, that is a good thing for the country. But one of those things, when you have that 4-year gap, and that pushes out beyond the statute of limitations for many of the things that could be brought against them, we don't know what they are. We don't know when they're alleging it happened. But if there is something that can be prosecuted, I think that would be good for the country.